So, welcome back to Sports Illustrated's Las Vegas Raiders Inside, part of the Fan Nation Network. It's time to go over our latest mock draft 6.0 with the great Matt Holatic from thespun.com, my dear friend and buddy and colleague. Matt, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. So I think what does that mean? We're going to have 8.0 by the time the draft happens?
Yeah, can you believe that? Um, Matt, I want to first dig in on the draft. I called it a curveball draft, and here's why. There is one quarterback that the Raiders would go up to 5 to get. I don't think there's any chance he's there. And then there's a couple other guys that they feel like are worth that number 7 pick. And assuming in this latest mock draft that things fall a little bit differently, I think there's going to be a run on 3. I've been saying for weeks, a lot of people think there's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to all be quarterbacks. But a lot of teams are not. Arizona hasn't moved yet. So that could change some things. There could be some drops. And in this one, for the first time, we had Christian Gonzalez dropping to 7, the cornerback out of Oregon, and that's who we had the Raiders pick. What would you think of the Raiders grabbing Gonzalez at 7?
I love Christian Gonzalez. I mean, I'll tell you what, as a Giants fan, and they need a cornerback. I wish there was a way he'd get to 25 or they could move up and get him because I think he could be the best corner in the draft. I think when you look at somebody who has all the physical attributes, the size, the frame, the athleticism you want in a modern cornerback, and you listen, you're going to be in a division where offense is at a premium and you're going to have to stop passing games. So you need to be well stocked in the secondary. So I think that if you go cornerback there, he's the guy to do it. So I think that would be a sensible pick.
I agree with you. Now, at 38th again, second round, I had him taking Cody Mock, the North Dakota State Mauler. The guy can play right tackle. He can play guard. I mean, they're set with Dylan Parham. They've got Alex Bars, a veteran returning. But this is a guy that one NFL executive told me he's dropping. I love this because you hear it all the time. Teams overanalyze. It's called paralysis by analysis. And now it's, well, what about his level of competition? There's concern there. But every time the guy gets asked to do anything, he does it. I had one guy tell me they think he's the steal of the draft. They don't think he's going to be available. I asked him, well, then why does your team take him? Because we have a bigger need in the first round. We don't think he's going to be anywhere near us in the second. But man, we love him. Cody Mock going at 38 with the Raiders. He'd slide him in and he'd be guard. What do you think of Cody Mock?
I think he's a kid who, like you said, is pretty much a plug and play option for them, especially right away at guard, but he could play right tackle. They need to shore up that offensive line, like we said, outside of Colton Miller. They need to keep developing, keep adding bodies, and solidifying it. And I think that he is kind of a player who you see, maybe like you said, you think a little, you overthink it, and you think, oh, you start looking for warts, you start looking for flaws in the game, and you don't necessarily focus on what they can do. And I think he'd be ready to step in and be a pretty big asset right away.
All right, then you go to 70 in the third round, and we had them taking DeJuan Jones at Ohio State. Now, you and I both know early in the process, there was projections of him in the first round. All this guy does on the field is dominate. He is a massive human being, and he dominates. Now, again, paralysis by analysis. As he's gone through the process, there's concerns about his weight. Does he keep his weight off in the offseason? Who cares what he does with his weight in the offseason? I remember years ago when I was covering Detroit, former number 1 draft pick, Big Daddy Wilkinson.
Daddy Wilkinson, yeah.
Okay, him and Sean Rogers, the Lions had them both. And everyone was concerned about the weight they had. Well, the point of the matter is when the season got going, they produced. And this blows my mind because if you'd have asked me at the beginning of the draft process, I would have laughed at you if you thought DeJuan Jones would fall all the way down to 70. But a lot of NFL execs are telling me, one exec told me, because we have him as one of our best offensive linemen. And he said, we don't need one. We're stacked. And he said, but we get into the third round, which their pick's significantly lower than the Raiders. He said, he's there. We're taking him. And he goes, and not because we think he's a third round talent. This is an example of teams overthinking. What do you think if the Raiders get DeJuan at right tackle at 70?
I mean, you're talking about one of the biggest human beings in the draft. He's probably one of the few guys who height wise could probably make you look small standing next to him. He's gigantic. Um, he is, listen, played against elite competition at Ohio State, not just in the Eastern Division, the Big Ten against Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State, but also in bowl games, also non-conference games. So he's played against the best of the best. A lot of experience, guy you could put in on the right side, so you don't have to worry about, you know, how does his weight transition to left tackle? How does his mobility transition to left tackle? He's a right tackle all the way, and you already have a left tackle in Colton Miller, so you're set there. I think if you are sold on Cody Mock being a guard right away, he's coming and playing guard. Getting a right tackle makes a lot of sense there, and I think if you could get him in the third round, it's a pick that value wise would be tremendous.
And then in the fourth round, I have him picking up their fifth player, Tanner McKee, the quarterback at Stanford. Listen, I know that they really like Hendon Hooker, and Hendon Hooker and Tanner McKee are totally different players. Let's not even pretend that they're the same. Hendon Hooker, many people believe, had he not been injured, would have been the number one quarterback in this draft. Yes, he plays a system where he goes where the coach tells him, but that's irrelevant. He's extremely accurate. He's very athletic, but he's coming off a major injury. You get a Tanner McKee, who reminds a lot of people of Mac Jones. He's a pocket passer. He's super intelligent, accurate, big arm. I know a lot of people don't like it because they want the more athletic quarterback. That's just simply a decision, an individual decision. But he fits Josh's scheme. He's smart. He could be a great addition, and they're going to get a quarterback to back up. I mean, to develop behind Brian Hoyer and Jimmy G. What do you think of Tanner McKee with that last pick in the fourth round?
Well, like we said, if you're not going to get a quarterback early that you think is your franchise guy, and it seems like the Raiders are not going to do that. They went out and got Jimmy G. They went out and signed Brian Hoyer, two guys that Josh McDaniels knows really well from New England. Uh, like you said, they don't think a quarterback that they like is going to get to them at 7. It makes sense to go get one now in the middle rounds because here's the thing: at worst, if you develop Tanner McKee, you develop a pretty solid cheap backup in the fourth round to back up because Brian Hoyer, even though it seems like he could play forever, isn't going to play forever. So now you might have Tanner McKee backing up Jimmy G. You might have Tanner McKee backing up your young quarterback that you draft another year or two down the line if you have an opportunity to. And the best case scenario is he develops into a functional starter. Like you said, he is a pure pocket guy, but might have a little bit of functional mobility in the play action game, which is what Josh McDaniels loves, and can move out a little bit and roll out, stuff like that. I think he has a lot of experience. He's obviously a smart kid coming from Stanford. So if you're taking a quarterback in the fourth round, I think you're either going for a high floor guy like him, where you think he could be a backup, maybe a low end starter, or you're going for a big ceiling type prospect where the guy could be out of the league in a year or two. And I think that the for the roster the Raiders have, for the quarterback structure they have, it makes more sense to go for a high floor guy in that spot.
Right. I want to go back in the third round to pick number 100 that they got for Darren before Tanner, obviously. Tanner's in the fourth. But Henry 2020. And man, I know I'm not getting his name right, but I've heard so many different pronunciations of it. I'm going to show myself a little grace here. But the linebacker out of Alabama, this kid is a scrapper. He's a guy that every time people don't bet on him, he just works. I mean, he is a quintessential Raider type player. Blue collar, going to show up, going to pound you. To me, this guy is a lot like Max Crosby, underrated. Now, obviously, he comes from a big school, but all he did at Alabama was win. And then when he transferred in from Tennessee, he was all SEC at Alabama. This guy just does a lot. I think he's flying under the radar, which is stunning to me. A lot of teams like him. What would you think of them picking up a Henry 2020 in the third round with pick number 100?
Well, I think that, like you said, former 5-star recruit. He was productive from the moment he stepped up on campus at Alabama after he transferred from Tennessee. Another guy who's played at the highest level in college. It doesn't get any higher than that, playing in the SEC West and then playing regularly in the college football playoff. So he's up for the task. And I think that a lot of times when you are picking guys in the middle rounds, we talked about Tanner McKee when you're picking quarterbacks in the middle rounds, but I think if you're picking players in the middle rounds, the ones that seem to kind of be the steals or the high value guys are guys that have that pedigree, that were big time recruits, that had played a high level of competition. Those are the guys that seem to outplay their draft status. And I think they have a need at linebacker. Obviously, the Raiders were talked about that throughout all the mock drafts, and I think that that's why he would fit there. And if you get him at pick 100, it would be it had the potential to be that kind of steal the draft type pick.
Awesome. He's the one and only, the great Matt Holatic from the spun.com. Matt, hold the line. I want to talk to you real quick. We'll be right back.